Hi, my name is rmorabia and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be building this little app together, Hello Name. So what it does is it takes the user input's name, and when you click on print name, it will print it below with a hello and in front and an exclamation point in back. So we can do this with any name, like Rhett, and it'll work the same. So this is a really good first app for just building the gap between, I know what a function is, I know what a variable is, and actually being able to build something that you can feel out of it. This is my first app in JavaScript, so it's very near and dear to my heart, and I hope you enjoy making it with me. So let's get started. I have VS Code open here, and we're just going to create an index.html to start. And I'm not going to be going in too much detail into the HTML. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to just create a little boilerplate for the project. Now in VS Code, if you type an exclamation point, you can see this abbreviation here. So if you type in tab after that, it'll just automatically make this like nice little boilerplate for us. So first of all, let's change the title to TinyJS project number 1, hello name. And then let's create our JavaScript file, script.js. So how do we make these two link together? Because without it, there's no way for us to run JavaScript without HTML. So it turns out there's a little thing in HTML that does that for us. It's just called the script tag. When we type this alone, this just means that we can type JavaScript in the middle here. But we want it to link to this external file that we already have that is JavaScript. So how do we do that? We can just type in source equals script.js, and this is usually best practice because inline JS in an HTML document isn't that great for performance. It's best to just always have them be separate in your projects. So let's move on to our JavaScript. First we want to check if the HTML file can even recognize this JS file. So what we can do is we can just type in a little alert, and then we have these parentheses for what we want to alert, and then if we type in a quote mark and then a hi, a quote is a string, so it'll literally just print out hi. So let's open our HTML file and let's see if that worked. It did, so that means that they're linked together. So now let's think about what we want our JavaScript to do. So what we want is for this HTML button to run JavaScript whenever I click this. So how do we do that? Well, there's something in JavaScript called add event listener. And what it does is it adds the capability to listen for an event. Now, what is an event? Event can be a click, an enter key press, or even the changing of the screen size. And once it hears that event happening, it'll run the code within it. So how do we first select the button so that we can add the event listener to it? So we type in document, and now document just means this HTML document. And then there's something in JavaScript called query selector. Now, query selector means that within the document, you can select any of these blue things on this page. These are all queries, and you can alter them within JavaScript. You can just change them with stuff like add event listeners, or you can just listen for them and not do anything with them. But for now, we're going to query select button, and we put this in quote marks because that's the name of the button. So with query selector, you're selecting the first button that exists. So if I had multiple buttons, it would only select the top button. So what do we do if we want to select something more specific? Well, first let's create our button here. And if we have 2 buttons, it'll only select this one. But what if we want to select the second button? We can just add a class equals button here. And in our script.js, we can select that by adding a period in front. Period is for class, and hash is for ID. Hash is the most specific. But if we just want to do the plain old tag name, it's just button. So let's get rid of this second button because we don't need it. We only have one button. Let's keep it simple. Let's just do the tag name. So what we want to do with this, first let's just add a little bit of text here to this button so that we can actually click it. And now that we have the button selected, we want to add the event listener to it. And so let's just recap what this says in English. In this HTML document, we want to select the element named button, and we want to add an event listener to listen for when the user does something. And in this case, we're going to listen for a click. So whenever a user clicks on the button, this is what we should do. So now how do we get to the this is what we should do? We should add a comma. And then we're going to create a function. So a function just exists to tell JavaScript this is everything that should happen once this button is clicked. And we declare a function by adding a function name, just function, and then, oh my god, it's not a function name. It's not a function name. It's not a function name. It's just a famous function. Okay. So how do we declare a function? We just type function in front so that JavaScript knows it's a function. We add these parentheses in case we want to do some variables, and then these brackets mean everything inside of the brackets is what's going to be running. So what do we want to run in here? Well, first let's just check if it actually works. We're just going to do another alert.hi, and when we refresh this page and we click OK, you can see that as many times as I press it, it'll keep alerting me hi. So that the event listener works for an infinite amount of time until we change it. So what do we actually want to happen? We want it to print this text with a hello in front and an exclamation point in back. So how do we do that? First, let's add the input element so that the user can actually, type their name. So it's just input, and I'm just going to add a placeholder of my name so that, people know what you're supposed to put in there, and you can help the browsers know what people are supposed to put in there by typing in a name, which is name. So this will add an input to our page, as we can see here, and now I can type in Radhika. Okay, well, it still says hi because we haven't selected this element yet. Somehow we have to select this input ID, and then we'll work with it from there. So let's go back to our script.js. It's very similar to this right here, this query selector. So what we're going to do is we're going to document, again, to select the HTML document, query selector, and then we're going to do input. So that will select our input. So now what happens if we alert that? Right? That should just alert the name, right? But first of all, let me explain why there's no quotes here. So if we put quotes here, what would happen is, you see how it goes all green? That means it would print this exact text. So if we want it to print what the input actually is, we need to do it without. So then it gets all syntax highlighted like this. This is just like a variable for the input tag here. So let's save this, and then let's see what happens. Object HTML input element. Why doesn't it get, blank or whatever I type in there? Let's do this again. And still the same. No matter what I type, it'll always say object HTML input element. So why does that happen? It happens because it's selecting the entire input, including these borders, including the character limit, including the placeholder. But we just want it to get the value of what the user typed here. So how do we do that? Well, we just add a dot value at the end. Just like the dot event listener, we add a dot value, and this should alert us to what the user typed, the value. And there it is. I can type in anything, and it'll just display the user input text within this alert. But we don't want it to do the alert. We want it to print the name down here. So how do we do that? We want it to print in our HTML document. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to have a place for this JavaScript to write it on. Just like how we selected these buttons and inputs, we need to select a spot to write it on. So what we can do in our HTML is we can just add a little paragraph right here. And what's going to happen is that since it's blank, it's not going to show up. Now you can see it in the HTML document, but when I look at the page itself, there's nothing here. It's impossible to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this. This is where I want my JavaScript to type, to print the text. Okay, so let's query selector P in this case. So we're selecting the paragraph. And now how do we make it so that, you know, the JavaScript knows that I want to print text in there? Well, it turns out there is another thing, just like add event listener, to add text content to an HTML, and it's just what you think it is, .text content. In this case, we're going to use an equal sign instead of a parentheses. That's just the quirk of the language. So anything after this equal sign is what's going to be the text content whenever the button is clicked. So what do we want the text content to be? We want it to be document.query selector input.value, just like we did before. So now let's save that and let's see if it worked. Radhika. And look at that, it prints Radhika. So that's nearly there. We're nearly there with this. But how do we add this hello and this exclamation point? It's not like they're going to be typing in hello Radhika every time. We want it to do this part automatically, you know, so that I can just type in Radhika. So what we can do is, this doesn't only have to accept one value. We can type a string, just like we did earlier with the, you know, hi. So what we can do is we can type hello manually, and then we can add it to this value, and then we can add an exclamation point. So if we look at this now, hello Radhika. I mean, there's no space, and I'll get to that in a second, but this will change every time. You can just do anything there, and because this is already in the JavaScript, it knows every single time to do hello and to do exclamation point. This is fixed, and it'll print it every time you click it. And this is the only variable in our JavaScript, and that's what the user input gives us. So to get the space, JavaScript isn't so smart, so you need to do a little space here, and now everything should work perfectly. Hello Radhika, there it is. That's the whole app. So as you can see, we used a lot of query selectors and event listeners and values. So this is the basics of how you can turn something like a function into something that works on a web page, that you can, you know, start to show off, that you can start to build to-do lists and games and everything else. It all starts with little apps like this. So I hope this was helpful. I will be printing the demo of this app and the source code in the description of this video. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. Have a great day. Build good apps.